Did you hear that? That's the main chant in the Republican National Convention. The crowd keeps on yelling, "Fight, fight, fight." This looks like a rally that you would see in an authoritarian regime, and this is what is taking place in the United States of America on day one of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. We're seeing it happen right now. Let me just play you that clip again so you can just hear it in its full context. Play the clip. And just so you see that it's not an isolated incident, this has this chant of "fight, fight, fight" has broken out numerous times today. Here's another example. Play it. And here's another example of that. Play it. As an Atlanta reporter, Greg Bluestein writes, "Expect to hear this a lot this week. The RNC delegates continue to chant 'fight' as Donald Trump did." And remember the clip where when Donald Trump was shot at, he then put his arm up. You'll see the gesture that he made. He made the Secret Service, wait. He said, "Wait." And then he said, "Fight, fight," and then told the crowd to fight. You remember that? Here, play this clip.
Wait.
And looking at that image of him telling the crowd to fight and raising his hand in the direction and way that he did, we didn't have the facts and data at the time. Of course, now we know that the shooter was white, male, Republican, 20 years old with an AR-15. By the way, they're having raffles to give away free AR-15s at the Republican National Convention. Should also be noted that throughout social media, they're now selling Donald Trump trading cards of himself from the incident and also his mugshot trading cards. I guess anything to make a buck in the modern day MAGA Republican Party, right? I'm reminded by what Mussolini's statement was at his rallies and events. For 18 years, Mussolini projected into the consciousness of the Italian people his slogan, "Believe, obey, fight." He employed every device of modern propaganda technique. He confidently expected a high state of civilian morale on the day when fascism should meet its supreme test in another world war. I want to share with you also, though, the individual who will be announcing Donald Trump's presence at the Republican National Convention. This is Dana White. As Donald Trump tells the crowd to fight, it's obvious why he's picking the person who runs the fighting company, UFC, the ultimate fighting competition leader, because they are putting forward violent imagery. So Dana White, who runs UFC, the fighting company, will be announcing Donald Trump. And this is Dana White and I believe his wife here. And again, I want to give just a bit disclaimer here. You'll see domestic violence, so if you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. It's a short clip, though. I just want to show you who. It's a trigger warning I'm giving you. But here's Dana White and his wife. This is who's announcing Donald Trump. Play the clip. And there have been protests right now outside of the RNC. Here is a march of the RNC underway in Milwaukee. Protesters are chanting, "No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA." Let's play a clip of this. Play it. In the rally before the Butler, Pennsylvania speech, one of the things that Donald Trump's been talking about at his various rallies is that one of his policies is that if he gets into office, he wants to start a fight club where he will have UFC fighters attack migrants. And that's one of the positions Donald Trump's putting forward. And he talks about that in his speeches. And if you're saying, "Oh, Ben, that's crazy. No one would actually say that." Yeah, he did. Here, play it.
Tough. They're so tough. Dana White. Did anyone ever hear of Dana White? He's a legend, right? UFC. ultimate fighter, ultimate fighting. And he's a fantastic man. I said, Dana, I have an idea. Why don't you set up a migrant league of fighters and have your regular league of fighters? And then you have the champion of your league. These are the greatest fighters in the world. Fight the champion of the migrants. I think the migrant guy might win. That's how tough they are. He didn't like that idea too much, but actually, it's not the worst idea I've ever had.
And just so you say, well, maybe that's just one isolated thing. No, I'll show you another clip of another speech where he says it. Play it.
They're tough. They're so tough. Dana White. Did anyone ever hear of Dana White? He's a legend, right? UFC, ultimate fighter, ultimate fighting. And he's a fantastic man. I said, Dana, I have an idea. Why don't you set up a migrant league of fighters and have your regular league of fighters? And then you have the champion of your league. These are the greatest fighters in the world. Fight the champion of the migrants. I think the migrant guy might win. That's how tough they are. He didn't like that idea too much, but actually, it's not the worst idea I've ever had.
Yeah, that's something Donald Trump consistently says over and over again. And then Fox, one of the propaganda machines, a la the exact propaganda machines that existed in Nazi Germany for Mussolini, that exists now in North Korea with Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin, they push it out. Here's Fox back last month saying that, look, Trump and the UFC connection, this is how you relate to real Americans by fighting and fight. Here, play this clip.
I just love that crowd. And that's our audience. That's real America. And that's how I grew up in South Carolina with people just like that love a good fight. And I think that's why they support Donald Trump, because they've seen what our government has tried to do to him. Mm-hmm. Trial after trial, all that Russia mess.
Well, she launched it in his first 2.5 years. It was all about Russia.
Yeah.
Think about this. Even the laptop, Ainsley, the laptop was during the president's presidency. The director of national intelligence says it's real. They ignored him, and they went with 51 intelligence people that were done with their job.
They were partisans, ultimately.
Yeah. But I think America looks at that and they say, Trump has survived all of this, and now he's stronger than ever.
You know what, Brian?
They're fighting for him.
Right. And it was Donald Trump who reposts, all of the violent imagery where his supporters have President Biden being like hogtied and gagged. And Donald Trump posts the QAnon stuff every single day over and over again. And so while that's going on, as the Washington Post reports, President Biden unveiled a plan to cap rents. And here's President Biden's plan to cap rents and stop landlords from raising tenants' rents more than 5% per year by taking away any types of tax benefits that Republicans would give to actually incentivize landlords to continue to increase the rent of tenants. So President Biden putting forward actual policies. And I understand as the corporate media wants to talk about, Trump's changing tone. No, he's not. He did a repost today. We did a whole nother video on, not a repost, he did a post where he talks about, he calls January 6th a hoax. And he defames E. Jean Carroll, the woman who he was found liable for sexually assaulting. There's not a change of tone right here. They are encouraging fighting. They're running a campaign on fighting, on authoritarianism, on dictatorship, on praising January 6th insurrectionists. I mean, here's a clip of Donald Trump calling the insurrectionists hostages and saying they should be freed. Play the clip.
What they've done, and you know what they ought to do? They ought to release the J6 hostages. They've suffered enough. They ought to release them. I call them hostages. Some people call them prisoners. I call them hostages. Release the J6 hostages, Joe. Release them, Joe. You can do it real easy, Joe. This guy, what he's done to people.
Here's Donald Trump saying he would consider pardoning the Proud Boys for their involvement in the insurrection. Play the clip.
Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio was sentenced to 22 years in jail. Now that you know what the sentence is, 22 years in jail, Will you give him a pardon? Will
Are
you
you
give
ready?
other Proud Boys a
I
pardon?
don't know him. I never met him. I never heard of him until I started reading this
Will you
stuff.
pardon him?
But I want to tell you, he and other people have been treated horribly.
Will you pardon him?
In Minneapolis, I'd certainly look at it. I'd look at that, and I'd look at all the other people that have suffered, the J6 people.
Here's Donald Trump saying that he would be a dictator. Play the clip.
We love this guy. He says, "You're not going to be a dictator, are you?" I said, "No, no, no, other than day one."
And as Donald Trump's using all of that rhetoric, Donald Trump says that this is a line that Hitler used, saying that immigrants are poisoning the blood of our nation. Look, we are a nation of immigrants. This is what he says. Here, play the clip.
Country, when they do that, we got a lot of work to do. They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions and prisons all over the world, not just in South America, not just the 3 or 4 countries that we think about, but all over the world. They're coming into our country from Africa, from Asia, all over the world. They're pouring into our country. Nobody's even looking at them. They just come in. The crime is going to be tremendous. The terrorism is going to be, and then we built a tremendous piece of the wall, and then we...
And look, just compare that to what President Biden said before. I'm not going to demonize immigrants. I'm never going to say they're poisoning the blood. Here's what President Biden previously said.
I will never demonize immigrants. I'll never refer to immigrants as poisoning the blood of a country. And further, I'll never separate children from their families at the border. I will not ban people from this country because of their religious beliefs. I will not use the U.S. military to go into neighborhoods all across the country to pull millions of people out of their homes and away from their families to put detention camps while awaiting deportation, as my predecessor says he will do if he occupies his office again.
So, folks, we're going to see this over and over again, this contrast here. These different visions of America. I want you to pay close attention to it. I can never believe in my life that we would have a leader of a major political party saying he wants to be a dictator, saying immigrants poison blood, saying release insurrectionists who he calls hostages, talking about creating a fight club league to have immigrants be attacked by professional fighters. That's what he says at his speeches. And that this is being normalized by corporate media. What the heck? That's why we the people are pissed. What the heck? Hit subscribe. Let's get to 3 million.
Hey Midas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.